Now to the program. We have with us two principals of the Olympic Force Coalition based in Quilcene. Connie Gallant is a 30-year resident of Quilcene. She's been active, very active in environmental and consumer protection since moving to Quilcene in 1982. Prior to that, she worked in human resources and photography. Along with her husband, JD, they began a multi-year citizen science monitoring project as volunteers on the conditions of Quilcene and Daybah Bays, from the effects of oyster spat hatcheries and dissolved oxygen levels, which resulted in a legal challenge to require coast seafoods to stop violating the Clean Water Act and seek a permit for their operations. Connie serves as president of OFCO. She is the chair also of the Wild Olympics campaign, a campaign proposing wilderness and wild and scenic river designations on the Olympic Peninsula for the protection of our watersheds. Connie is the recipient of many awards, and these include the Washington Wilds co-founder Karen M. Font Environmentalist Award in 2009. That was followed in 2014 by the Olympic Audubon Society Conservation Award, followed by the Hood Canal Coordinating Council Environmental Award, the Northwest Watershed Institute's Salmon Creek Restoration Award, and just a few months ago, the Eleanor Stopps Environmental Leadership Award. Her partner in crime is Patricia Jones. Patricia joined OFCO as the part-time executive director in July 2016. Patricia is responsible for all communications with agencies, organizations, and donors, as well as she manages OFCO's programs in public, federal, and state forests and associated marine waters of the Olympic Peninsula. Patricia's background in environmental justice and human rights law and policy focused on safe drinking water and sanitation domestically in the United States and internationally. Her experience includes shareholder advocacy with major US corporations and advocacy at the utility, local, state, national, and international levels on the human rights to water. Patricia holds a PhD and a Master's of Law in International Water Law, an American Law degree, and a Bachelor of Arts in International Studies from the University of Washington. Thank you both for presenting tonight. We look very, very forward to this very important presentation. So take it away, Patricia and Connie.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to share screen, so give us a moment. Make sure we have this working. It did a while ago. Turn off our video. All these things. Anyhow, we would like to thank the North Olympic Sierra Club for this invitation and for your continued dedicated work to protect the Olympic Peninsula. We are so honored to be part of your program tonight. So as Darlene mentioned, this presentation will take approximately 20 to 30 minutes. With your questions, please put them in the chat room and we'll respond after the presentation. Because this case is so intricate, I hope you forgive us for reading sometimes from our notes. You know, we want to get it right. Okay, next.
Next. All right.
The right arrow.
Yeah.
There you go. And this is who we are, so you can recognize us in our voices. I'm Connie Gallant.
And I'm Patricia Jones.
Okay, next. As you can see, there are 3 plaintiff organizations plus individual plaintiffs
who filed a case against Commissioner of Public Lands, Hilary Franz of Department of Natural Resources, or DNR. Olympic Forest Coalition, or OFCO for short, is one of the plaintiffs. The individual plaintiffs are Peter Bales, Marcy Goldie, Holly Kuhn and Max Duncan, Mike and Meg Town, Scott Wallace, and Linda Lawrence. They are from all over the state with various interests: conservationists, foresters, teachers, and scientists. Tonight, we will give you a case background and what we hope to win with this case. Next. Federally granted land was intended and was designated to be held for the public and to support public institutions, including K through 12 school construction and state universities. The constitutional question at issue in the case is Article 16, Section 1 of the Washington Constitution states that all the public lands granted to the state are held in trust for all the people. Now, this is different than other land grants in Western states like Colorado. The plaintiffs have asked the court to confirm the plain text meaning of the Constitution. DNR must balance the goals of generating revenue to name trusts and other public benefits of state lands. Next. Next. Oh, that's it. Oh, sorry. I was looking at the wrong thing. Rather than me reading these bullet points to you, I would like to invite you to read them quietly, reflect on the benefits that you personally enjoy from our public lands, and add your comments in the chat room. Let's take a few moments.
There's a lot at stake here in this case.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. DNR's current interpretation is that the trust imposes undivided loyalty to the named trust beneficiaries exclusive of any other public interest. That means that generating revenues outweighs all other goals. DNR is relying on an antiquated 1994 case on timber sales. That was the County of Skamania versus Washington State. The conservation argument is that the Constitution provides DNR abundant discretion and the duty to protect public values like drinking water, public safety, such as from landslides, carbon sequestration, and wildlife habitat, as well as generating revenues. Our case is about how DNR manages forest lands, not about sales, as in Skamania. The federal granted lands are schools and educational institutions, approximately 78% of state managed forest lands. So the state school superintendent, Chris Rakedahl, Board of Natural Resources member, noted that climate change is the biggest factor the state faces in the future, impacting forest, wildlife, water quality, people, and the economy. Rakedahl said that revenue from timber harvest is not the future of school construction, and that money would be better used to protect species and habitat and address climate change while supporting industries and impacted counties. Now, timber revenues provide only 1 to 6% of common school construction funds. Please note that 78% of state forest potential timber sales provide only 1 to 6% of construction funds. So this case will not directly affect county lands and will govern only federal lands unless DNR applies the same management to the county lands as it currently does. Next slide, please. The picture that you see on the top right is the landslide tragedy in Oso, Washington. Clear cuts contributed to this landslide. In the last month, we have seen the impacts of climate change with the flooding, landslides, and the atmospheric river weather pattern. The atmospheric rivers impact are the analog in our area to forest fires, which we also experience, especially in the Eastern Peninsula. The culverts on forest roads are failing, dumping tons of sediment into the watersheds, destroying roads and trails and habitats. DNR has a forest fire program, but that is not enough for our area. Addressing these types of weather impacts is needed on an emergency basis. We send firefighters into danger to protect forests. Thus, we need crews to clear culverts and bridges from flood debris so that we don't continue to lose millions of dollars of salmon habitat restoration, the orcas, fisheries, and the economy. Next slide. The resilience to impacts of climate change, such as wildfire, drought, and disease, atmospheric rivers, as mentioned, we hope we can stop or change the feedback loop and begin to recover in the coming decades to reverse it. The drawdown of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and storage of carbon in trees and soil while promoting climate stability, this is essential. Forest treatments for forest health will increase long-term timber volume in Westside Forest from tools like longer rotations, ecological thinning, and will provide more carbon storage and available volume to harvest along with revenues. It also means we can maintain and potentially expand the forest sector workforce, maintaining and creating jobs through a 21st century conservation corps and the forestry sector. Next slide, please.
So this case is a very interesting one from many aspects, but particularly procedurally. It all began in December 3rd, 2019, when the Board of Natural Resources, or BNR, approved the long-term conservation strategy for the marble murrelet. Many of you in the Sierra Club submitted comments and watched over the 5-year period for the development of that policy, and over millions of dollars. In December, almost immediately, Skagit County also had been prepared to file a lawsuit against the policy. They were asking for more logging. January 2nd, 2020, American Forest Resources Council, AFRC, filed a similar lawsuit in Skagit County Superior Court, also asking for more logging as an alternative to the murrelet policy that was adopted. January 2nd, 2020, OFCO, WEC, C&W filed all the people case in King County Superior Court. Our case worked through the Superior Court and was dismissed by the judge. We decided to, rather than go through the appellate level, we were advised by our attorneys, and I'd like to say we have excellent attorneys. Peter Goldman from Washington Forest Law Center, Wyatt Golding from Chestnut Zions, who actually argued the case before the Supreme Court, just great attorneys. And they proposed to us, why don't we actually petition the Washington Supreme Court for direct review rather than going through the appellate process? The Supreme Court unanimously accepted direct review. I think primarily, we think, because the case is of such importance to the state and all of the stakeholders and interests. What happened then was both the other cases, the Skagit County and AFRC's lawsuits, were put on hold in Superior Court pending the Supreme Court's decision. It's the constitutional question that will turn the case, all of these cases. In October 21st, 2021, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments. There is a link to the actual hearing on OFCO's website. I commend it to you. It's a very interesting hour. You can see Wyatt Golding exchanging with the Supremes. In particular, interesting is one of the justices is the justice who penned the opinion in Skamania these many years ago. So you'll see an interesting exchange between her and Wyatt about the impact of this case on the Skamania case. The next important thing to look for is the decision. Subject to the court, of course, they have a year, perhaps sometime this spring. It could be into the fall of this year, 2022. We actually, our lawyers think that we will, because it's such an important case and other cases are pending and economic interests are at stake, that we will hear sooner rather than later. So watch for news. If you could advance the slide, Darlene, please. So before we go to the Q&A on the case, we wanted to share with you briefly, some important work OFCO is doing that we would like you to be aware of. The first is Jefferson County and Port Townsend are continuing to develop their greenhouse gas policy. And as a part of that effort, their Climate Action Committee, a group of volunteers of practitioners and experts, developed a carbon inventory for the public forest lands in Jefferson County and in Port Townsend. And we have on the presentation tonight in the participant audience, Cindy Jane, and she's our wonderful volunteer leader who's heading up this effort. We also have Ms. Kopass, and it's Ms. Kopass's daughter, Dr. Catherine Kopass, who has done all the wonderful technical work for OFCO as a volunteer in this process. That report is out for public comment to the local jurisdictions, and Cindy and the Climate Action Committee hope to host a public event later on in 2022 about the outcomes of that report. So it's a very interesting first step to developing carbon policy in local jurisdictions. The second thing that we'd like to talk to you about is the Olympic Forest Collaborative. And this is on federal forests, not state forests, that we're talking about tonight. It's the Olympic National Forest and to some degree the park, but it's the Olympic National Forest. Representative Kilmer brought together a group of timber conservation organizations, OFCO is one, and we founded the collaborative. The collaborative is a effort to scientifically test various different treatments on the Olympic National Forest to bring forest health to the front as ecological goals. So it's timber and conservation working together to test new methods, primarily ecological thinning. It also has an interesting aspect, and that is that the projects that we promote are what are called stewardship projects, where the receipts from the sales, timber sales, actually stay on the forest and are dedicated to aquatic restoration rather than going into the general fund of the U.S. Forest Service nationally. It's an interesting project. What we'd like to highlight for you is a couple of things. First, OFCO and 10,000 Years Institute and Resilient Forestry have developed what is the first and only monitoring protocol for a Washington Forest Collaborative to actually track and make sure that the treatments that we're doing are having the outcomes that we want them to have. And that protocol is out for public comment. It's on the Olympic Forest Collaborative website. And if you have an interest, we would love to have your feedback on that protocol. Secondly, OFCO's commissioned a literature review for some emerging science since the science synthesis of 2018 on both forest treatments and fire prevention, tracking what actually is the best available science for that, as well as treating older plantation stands over 80 years old in. So watch for that literature review. Lastly, and this is back to state forests, the Olympic Experimental State Forest is a large planning unit for the Department of Natural Resources under the Habitat Conservation Plan. Takes in a part of Clallam County, Jefferson County, and a wee bit of the northern part of Grays Harbor. The OESF, we have monitored now for 20 years DNR timber sales that were of concern to us that we have commented on. We're doing a 20-year retrospective. Dr. Kopass, Catherine Kopass, is leading this effort again. There'll be a report out actually including field work to see if DNR's assumptions overriding our comments and concerns and going ahead with very bad timber sales actually resulted in what DNR said that they would. We're also possibly considering a litigation in the OESF. Let me turn it over to Connie for some other important projects we'd like you to be sure and know about before we get back to our case.
Thank you, Patricia. So as Darlene mentioned earlier, OFCO filed a lawsuit against Coast Seafood, which, by the way, has now been renamed Pacific Seafoods after their parent company, a conglomerate. Coast Seafood is in Quilcene, and the lawsuit was filed because they were polluting the bay's water. They had destroyed the ability of Quill Bay to nurture, feed, and grow almost everything but their own shellfish, and that includes marine mammals, birds, eelgrass. They turned a once beautiful bay teeming with most life into a dead zone. We won that part of the case, but Pacific appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, where, by the way, we also won, and Pacific was required to get a permit under the Clean Water Act from Ecology. Pacific has completed its permit application. They did that in November, and Ecology is reviewing it at the present time. So please watch for the comment period on the permit, which could be any day now. We will prepare comments and talking points for your use, and we'll share with Sierra Club and other organizations. We need strong comments, folks. Our water quality expert, Mark Hirsch, is reviewing Pacific Seafood's final documents now, and we will also make that available. Now on to a project that has been dear to my heart. And if I had been told back in 2006, 2007 that I would still be on it, I think I would have said, well, maybe sayonara. But we were very fortunate to have the Wild Olympics campaign bill pass the House this last fall and also have a hearing in the Senate. Our Senator Patty Murray, who has been an absolute champion, has been working to secure a commitment to pass the bill out of committee in the Senate. We were prepared for that to happen in December when there was some urgency around the potential for the bill to be attached to another Senate bill. But you know how things happen in the Senate. As the opportunity waned, Senator Murray truly made an effort to get us in. I mean, she really did. However, the urgency for the committee markup waned and it was pushed to January. So while we are running out of time this month, we have every indication that our bill is among the priorities for the next committee markup. The delays have nothing to do with issues specific to our bill, but are more broadly related to overall timing and sequencing for a suite of public land bills that are in play. In the evenly divided Senate, with a committee that is split 50-50, as you all know, we need at least one Republican vote to pass our bill out of committee. Now, for those who perhaps may not know very much about the Wild Olympics, I would like to just give you a little bit of background on it. The Wild Olympics campaign was created to protect 126,000 acres of wilderness. At least that acreage is what is now on the bill. We really actually started with a lot more. And also protect 19 rivers and tributaries on the Olympic Peninsula. Wilderness is the strongest level of protection on federal lands, and a designation requires an act of Congress and the president's signature. Designated wilderness areas, of course, preserve important habitat for wildlife, providing clean air and water for local communities and a natural legacy for future generations. A wild and scenic river designation protects a river's outstandingly remarkable values such as wildlife, recreation, fisheries, cultural, and free-flowing character. The designation prohibits federally licensed dams and other harmful water projects. We will, of course, try again this year because we will never give up. Next slide. Thank you so much. And now we are ready for your questions.